Hello everybody, my name's Lawrie Kirk and I'm the DASA Ambassador for Australia and New Zealand. And today it's a great opportunity for me to talk to one of the people that we've been working with in this community to introduce DASA into Australia. And Julian Stevenson, who's the Product Director for RMIT Online in Melbourne. Hello Julian, how are you going?
Hi Lawrie, I'm good, thanks. How are you going?
Good. Well, for people who may realise that I'm not in the office, and nor is Julian. As you can see, I'm actually in my wife's craft room, so that's because the lighting is good. And you're in your office. People, this may post, we're doing this interview in COVID times, and particularly in Melbourne, where you are on very tight restrictions. So we certainly, online learning is at the tip of everyone's tongues, isn't it, at the moment?
It certainly is. Yeah, it's been a very interesting time, obviously, across the university sector, and for us personally in Melbourne, it's been we're in our second lockdown.
Yes.
Hopefully coming out of it now, but it's certainly working from home has become the norm, and it's been an interesting time for all of us in the university and especially in online.
It is. Now, we're going to talk today a little bit about how you've introduced DASA DevOps into RMIT. Could you tell RMIT, what does RMIT stand for? Because we'll have people from around the globe who are listening in.
Yeah, it puts the Royal into MIT, I like to think, but it's actually not Massachusetts. It's the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. We do have campuses in Vietnam, Singapore, and Barcelona, but two main campuses are in Melbourne here. Both campuses are empty at the moment, obviously because of COVID, but overall we've got around 90,000 students across those different campuses and across online.
90,000.
90,000. So hence, wow. Yeah, exactly. So we've got, we service a lot of students across, RMIT Online. We focus very much obviously on the online arm of the university, so we really focus on 100% online degrees, both postgraduate and undergraduate, really that focus on an online first experience.
Yes.
Been a very interesting time for the university with the rapid transition of all programs all teaching online. Yes. So we've been working in that space for a number of years. So we're really prepared as a university. We're prepared as RMIT Online to support students with that online experience. Probably to give some context to RMIT more broadly. We're a university where we sit at that nexus of business, design, and technology. And core to our DNA is the integration and the relationships we have with industry with a focus on job outcomes. So that's really our kind of core focus. We build academic programs as well as we'll talk a bit more about the micro-credentialed short courses, which is relevant to this discussion, but really embed industry organisations and our partners into that, which is where some of that kind of connection comes back into DASA and the broader network.
Excellent. Well, now for those what does a product director do, and a bit of your background? How did you come to sunny Melbourne? And I say sunny Melbourne because I can see it is sunny outside. So
absolutely sunny Melbourne. Well, I'm from not so sunny most of the time, UK originally. So I've been in Melbourne the last 14 years thereabouts. My background actually in the sort of late 90s was as a developer in the early days, building out CD-ROMs for a data business, credit bureau in the UK. And then
I remember those things. Well, actually, some of the young people wouldn't know what they are. I can remember those. Right. It was the bigger floppy ones. So.
Exactly, yeah. The round discs that you popped in, CD-ROMs. Look them up on in your antique shop. But my starting role was in a language in a programming which I think is still going, Delphi, which was all Pascal, Turbo Pascal based. But pushing that aside, obviously then moved in, around that time, late 90s, moved into web development. So built enterprise platforms in Java, again heavily based around data, products that were servicing sort of data insights in the early days. So through that kind of moving to Melbourne, very much technical roles in terms of developer, team lead, in owning platforms, into project management, and then in the last 12 years, really been firmly planted in sort of product management. And my background is not in education. I've been working at RMIT Online 2.5 years. Prior to that, very much sort of digital product My role before this was working at a company called Invato, which is one of the kind of larger sort of success startup stories in Australia. They own and run a series of marketplaces for digital design assets such as website templates, WordPress themes. If you've heard of Theme Forest, Graphic River, PhotoJune, and Video Hive, that's Invato.
A wonderful experience that you're bringing to people at RMIT who are looking that industry experience. You're a very good you're a very nice match for your background.
I think that's right, and I think two things really around that are that one absolutely is RMIT Online. We really set ourselves up 3 years ago not as a really the vision of the university was to set us up as a bring that digital product thinking and combine that with the strengths of the leading academic institute, and you get that magic in there. You get the educational expertise and integrity along with probably product thinking, which has enabled us to kind of rapidly grow and have huge success across this set of online short courses. And for me personally, with Invato, it was it was what I'd call a very mature DevOps organization. So as a senior product leader in that organization, I worked in an environment where it was just a wonderful example, I think, of the benefit of agile and DevOps, continuous delivery, integration. Yes. We didn't have I was surprised as a product manager when I joined, we didn't have testers and BAs even. It was very much the product team or the development team owned every piece of the roadmap for their area, and the developers were enabled into that kind of DevOps, continuous integration, continuous sort of self-management and autonomy that goes with it. So very sort of passion, and that passion obviously came across in terms of how we manage product and course build within RMIT Online, but also gave me a certain passion for tackling this topic within our portfolio.
Yeah. So I think that's pardon me. When we talked before, now we met some 18 months ago, and I was very fortunate to have a visit to your offices and see the production that you do behind the scenes, which is incredibly impressive for your online courses. But I'm interested, before we get to the development of the particular DASA DevOps course you're doing, let's go back a step and to the pathway, because I think it's an interesting story about you don't just wake up and say, I'd like to put in a course. You have a really thorough exploration before you even select. Could you maybe tell our listeners and also the people viewing, how did you get to this pathway? What is the RMIT pathway, which in this case eventually chose DASA DevOps?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, fundamentally, as I mentioned, our focus on, those connections to industry and really, identifying, 3 years ago, what the critical point specifically Australia is at with this digital skills transition, the enablement of successful digital transformations and the skills gaps that sit with that. Deloitte recently identified that over the next 6 years, there's going to be 121,000 new IT jobs. And that's growth in jobs from technology. So that's not displacement, that's actually augmentation. Now, the universities are only going to produce around about 38,000 IT graduates in that period. So we've got 83,000 jobs, according to Deloitte, that need to be filled by the existing workforce. So if we think what that means for a university, it really highlights the need for universities such as RMIT to think about how they adapt to that. Yes, absolutely, there's a need for school leavers to come through the undergraduate path, and there's a need to transform how we deliver undergraduate learning, but a focus on skills and the digital skills that the workforce needs, the lifelong learner needs. Things move so quickly in technology, in the workforce, just even look, they've only been accelerated in recent months through COVID, and what's happening here, that we all need to be lifelong learners now. We all need to kind of continuously learn new skills. And I think
there's even hope for a 1981 ag science graduate who did basic computing. They are basic. Let's get back.
There you go. You'll be our target audience. We did have one of our very early students was I think he was around 80 years old, that did one of our blockchain courses, and and it was the stand-up example of a lifelong learner. And so if you start there, if we start with the need to address digital skills gaps, and our focus initially was Australia. We've now recently launched in Singapore with some partners over there, Singapore Institute Institute of Management. So we focus on the core skills and the technologies that are driving this rapid change. You know, that's a starting point for informing what are the skills. The next for us is to speak with our industry partners, whether it's people such as DASA, and understand the skills gap there and the need for training there. But also we have very close partnerships with AWS, with Salesforce, with Apple, with Slack, with these large digital companies, with Accenture, with Deloitte. So all of these companies inform us as well, whether it's through their standard, their reports they release, whether it's through our conversations with them. We built one of our early courses we built with AWS when they launched their Sumerian platform, their VR AR platform. They didn't have any kind of learning material around that platform. So we worked very closely with them to build the first online credentialed short course around that platform as an example. So we start with the skills gap. We focus then on the industry partner and the industry influence in there, and of course we then do our own desk research, our demand.
That's a long period of time. I was very impressed when I think when we see a lot of certifications come to the market, I know the energy and effort and resources that you're putting in to not only select the right certification, but to make sure as you go along you've got that assurance with current industry like those big players you have. And I think that's an incredibly impressive thing for people listening in about RMIT Online's course, that the DASA course you're doing, you've had industry people injecting there saying, this is good, this is what we need.
That's right.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic preparation, not often done.
And that's right. And it's like the question we ask ourselves, as we think about, there's a skill, we recently launched, for example, a brand experience course. Now, who are the leaders in Australia in brand? There's an organisation called Think About, who are a brand agency here, who are leaders in the field. There are those strong brands, the Australian brands. We've got Vegemite as a partner. We've got the Iconic as a partner. So that's really where the magic is in the courses, I think, and we blend that into the creation of the course and the teaching of the course. These courses are taught and mentored by industry experts, but we don't leverage the academics in the micro-credential space, because we recognise the need of, each course run that we have will have potentially a different industry mentor that brings their own lens and influence to the learning frameworks and structures that we have. So I think, it's worth us, we've now got 38 courses we've built in 2.5 years across all these different core skills. We recently, we look at other areas. So I won't say we've covered every skill in digital transformation, but we've covered a lot of the core ones, the agile. We've got an agile delivery course, an agile project management course. It's a polarizing course title for anyone in agile, but there's a need there. Product management.
Okay, well, APMG has an agile project management course, so there'll be sections of the market that will be attracted to that.
That's right.
What I'm interested in is why DASA. You did a lot of service, and I know I was very impressed, and I know we certainly gave you a meeting with Deborah Burton, the previous DASA general manager, and it was. I'm interested to know why DASA, what we were attracted to the DASA approach for DevOps.
Yeah, absolutely, and obviously there's the relevance of DASA more broadly within the DevOps community. But I think when we dive deep into I guess the framework, the competency model within there, and this kind of connects it back in a way to the strength I think of RMIT Online in terms of bringing that kind of digital leaders from Australia into our organisation. That we were able to assess that competency framework and say how it was such a close fit to how we see skills development and upskilling and reskilling. DevOps, we didn't tackle DevOps from a purely technical, I'm a developer, I need to understand DevOps, or I'm an operations person, I need to understand DevOps. The competency framework covers all the roles within a cross-functional team, and that's our focus for DevOps. If someone wants to learn the tools of DevOps, then there's an Amazon course, there's an AWS course for that. Yes. There's a Microsoft course, there's other DASA content. So I think the kind of alignment of the in some ways there's the approach, the values of DASA, the thinking around what it means to upskill in this space for us was just such a good fit.
Well, it worked well because I think you're looking at the foundations course, but since we've actually in that 18 months, you could see the vision of DASA where they put their own roadmap out, and you could see that it wasn't just talk, they've delivered. Others have followed, but they've delivered. And you can see that they've got the leadership and the coaching. So there is that progression, picking up on your lifelong learning as well. And I think that's a great area. I think the other thing that we noted when we were originally our discussion is, for people who don't know, that competency mapping. If you go to the DASA DevOps website and have a look at the skill scan that you're looking there, you can go on and not only for your own interest, but think about your team, and that fitted very nicely in with your direction. I'm looking at the course, and I'm interested in how you prepared the course. One thing that you use to make sure there's local content, and a second part of that question is, you hinted at before, you've got local mentors, industry-based. Could you maybe just, so our viewers and our listeners, maybe some of those aspects of how you went about building the course and support from DASA?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we obviously have a kind of process and framework for building courses, and again, that starting point is to validate the. We start with if you like, a lo-fi design of a course. What we think needs to be in there, and that's where we really, during those initial design workshops, we really bring in. We really need to bring in the experts, the SMEs, and we on this course, we to have the DASA content as a foundation for kind of what is DevOps and what does it mean, and how do you make it work. But then to layer in this instance, our partners on this course were ThoughtWorks and CMD. So we bring the principal lead for DevOps and development within ThoughtWorks Australia was the SME in that design and through the build. So we can now design. The reason this design phase is so important is in some ways twofold. One is to set the actual course build up for success, so that we can then more rapidly build it. And bear in mind, we tend to build courses end to end in around 12 weeks, so we do move quickly. So that design phase is so critical in terms of facilitating the build, and having the DASA content in there becomes such a core part of accelerating through that. But the second part is feeding into the micro credentials. So there's a lot of talk and discussion around micro credentials more broadly in the education sector. RMIT, we've had a micro credential framework in place for the last 3 years. And really core to an effective micro credential framework is the kind of the integrity of the learning outcomes, the integrity of the industries and the skills that are being learned, the assessment model, the rubrics that are in the course. So out of that design workshop, we would come away with learning outcomes and assessment model. Our teaching and learning model, if you want to call it that, is the same across all our courses, and that then feeds into how we run the courses over a period of typically 6 to 8 weeks. They're a few hours a week, 5 to 10 hours a week, typically across our courses. There's content and obviously the DASA contents within the digital content. We layer in videos from industry leaders such as ThoughtWorks and CMD and others. Our industry mentors, run weekly webinars. We use Slack to support students with discussion and progress them through the course. We have weekly milestones, and probably lastly, again, the kind of project assessment, or the project that sits around these courses, is a real world project that we want students to come away walking away with a toolkit, with a project that they can use in their workplace. So in this DevOps course, which is really focused on fundamentals of DevOps, but also the kind of business benefit. How do I convince my executives that DevOps is right? How do I implement DevOps within my organization? Students walk away with a plan for their business that they can take and say, this is what DevOps is going to do. This is how it's going to change our release cycles, bringing efficiencies and change. So again, that industry mentorship in there is to get them to a point whereby they've successfully completed a project and been assessed against those criteria.
And the industry mentor is Paul Mateus, who's also a DASA influencer of recent day. Hello, Paul, if you're listening. But having Paul there reinforces that. We've got that strong domain knowledge of DASA, but also he lives and breathes of that. And he's also, it's a lovely marriage when you have both combination of industry, real life consultants being your mentor.
That's right.
you also got that partnership. It's an amazing approach. It really is.
That's right. And to mention Paul again, he was one of the SMEs in the build again. So not only he could bring that, again, sometimes you just get these connections in the build. Sometimes they're harder. Some topics are harder. With this one, we had Paul who brought that fantastic knowledge of DASA and could ensure that was layered in. We had with ThoughtWorks in there, Evan who could really bring that consult. What is it that businesses are doing and how do businesses transform into this world? So if you think about the combination of those two ingredients and how magical that is, we do have courses that are harder. They're more technical topics that are more cutting edge, that can be harder to piece together in some ways. But I think this is probably an example of a particularly effective build. Certainly the team that build the courses were very happy with the way it went, and we're very.
And you get that feeling of the team. And then to add the other end, which I remember I had one email from you said, "I'm glad I don't have to think about it." APMG came in with the certification on the exam, so that's the fourth industry partner there, where with APMG would come in and the students have got the voucher to do the online foundation exam, and APMG administers that. So they get a digital badge, and they get the e-certificate. The digital badge fits through there.
And I think that that was another little ingredient of why DASA as well, and as it was APMG, was that certification that again, part of many of our courses we include an industry certification. We have courses with AWS that prepare you towards the AWS Cloud Architect and Practitioner exams. We have Salesforce certification, so you walk away with a digital badge from RMIT, but you also then are prepared. You're prepared for the exams. And in the DASA DevOps course, we include the cost of the exam in the course, so you're then able to, through APMG, get that certification. So whichever one is more valuable to you on your digital resume becomes important.
And it also sets up one of the things the students do when they create their candidate portal is that they'll have that APMG candidate portal for life. So it reinforces the philosophy that you're wanting to do with RMIT of learning online, whether it's from anywhere else. And that I've seen it encourage people to say, look, I've done the DevOps, I might do one of these others, and it's all sitting in their portal. So when they want to then demonstrate to their employer, they're actually demonstrating experience that's against these standards. So I think it's a bright future for everybody.
That's right. And ultimately the vision for us, we're working through this, but the vision is, to get these skills into our undergraduates, into our school leavers. So, how do we transform a degree? Students come away from a university with a valuable degree, but they come away with a debt, and they don't always come away with the skills that they need to be effective in the workplace. So that's again such a core focus for RMIT to bring that into the picture as well. So for a student to walk away from a 3-year IT degree with an AWS certification, a Salesforce certification, a DevOps DASA certification, these are things that are, we're very passionate about RMIT. We see that really is the future of education for us.
Well, you've nearly answered my last question for our discussion is where we be in next 12 months. Well, I hope that we've out of COVID for starters. Let's put so September next year. Let's hope for those who are listening to Australia that the AFL Grand Final will be back at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, not Brisbane.
They will be back again. I don't know. Brisbane.
I know. I hate to say it today. It's a black arm day in Melbourne as well. You've lost the football Grand Final. But what would, in 12 months' time, where do you think our discussion might be if we're doing an anniversary discussion?
Well, I think there's kind of two pieces to that. What we've seen during this period is obviously a massive move to online learning, both in terms of the practicalities of that's where people can learn now during a pandemic and one that involves lockdowns, but also just in terms of I think the acceleration of transformations that are happening in organisations. What's happening today with organisations moving to remote working, technologies enabling this. Companies are going to have to react and respond to coming out of this pandemic, and our view on RMIT Online is very much this is accelerating what we knew was coming anyway. So there's nothing new here for us. So we're very prepared for what's coming. I think in the next 12 months for us, we're just seeing more and more demand for these skills and these courses. We're seeing more and more large enterprises and organizations, recognize how they need to build an upskilling and reskilling strategy into their transformation, if you like, or into their workforce. It's not just good enough now to put a team on an agile course or say, hey, you're a product manager, you should get a product management course. It's more around saying, these all of our employees are becoming members of cross-functional teams. They all need to understand these different skills. Developer understanding that how to use a design thinking approach to problem solving. A product manager such as myself, and again passionate about this space because as a product manager working in a mature DevOps organization, having a deeper understanding of what that means and why we're doing DevOps. I learned the skills on the job in a very effective, mature setup when I started at Vato. Had I been able to go on a course before I started, I would have been a lot more grounded in terms of, that's why they're doing it this way. That's why they don't have 2 weeks.
Maybe I think I'll give you a little hint. We may come back. I think the concept of challenge-based learning might be, because I think we'll have a lot of people that will want to be able to demonstrate the next wave, that they want to actually have demonstration of use of these skills and the knowledge in there. And plus also it'd be lovely to see some of the people you move forward. My vision is I'd love to see RMIT Online take on the next levels of DASA. I think that's a maturing aspect. So let's look favourably on the next 12 months and we'll see what happens.
Right. I think, absolutely. And I think, more broadly, again, micro-credentials are all the rage at the moment. And I think we're well set up there. So the move, as part of this move to, more structured skills-based training and strategy for organisations, recognising the importance of certifications and micro-credentials in there is key, and that then leads us exactly to that path of what's next for this space, and how do we continue to kind of expand the portfolio here.
Well, Julian, we've run out of time, unfortunately, in that regard, but it's been a wonderful thank you for an insight into the journey. I've learned something again today of 90,000. I've also a little bit of hope as an ag science graduate of 1981, and maybe I need to dash up my basic computing skills. There is hope for me yet. Who knows? I would urge people, very easy, isn't it, to go on to RMIT Online, and maybe if you searched RMIT Online DevOps, would that come up?
Yeah, that should come up. Yeah, it's the URL is online.rmit.edu.au. If you head there, you'll see all of our courses. We have the courses have a start and end date. I should have prepped to find out when the next DevOps one's running, but if you look on there, you'll see when the next start date is. And we have different courses running starting every 2 weeks. So we've got 38 courses there now across all different core skills. So
yeah, if you listen to this podcast, I think, as you know, that there's a regular scheduling on RMIT Online, and we can certainly get you involved. Julian, thank you very much for your time, and really appreciate it. So on behalf of the DASA DevOps and being Ambassador of Australia and New Zealand, there will be some contact details in the LinkedIn posts and other social media posts we have. Please contact either myself or Julian if you'd like further details. But thank you, Julian. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Lawrie. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thanks again for having me.
Good.